So we are now going to talk a little bit about industrial IoT. And we have two speakers. We have Christy Pitts, who we heard from this morning on the main stage. She is a manager with Verizon Ventures. And one of their investments is in a company called Veniam. And we have Daniel Kennison, who is the sales director for Veniam. So we've got about 20-25 minutes for this session. And the sorts of things I'd like to explore here is, so where are we right now with industrial IoT? How is Verizon Ventures structured in terms of how it's looking at IoT opportunities? Why were they interested in investing in Veniam? And learning a little bit more from Veniam about where we are right now with this sector and how it's evolving. Certainly IoT is one of the main themes at this show here. We certainly heard a lot about that this morning with some of the main stage pitches and so on. So I thought what we would do actually is start with Daniel, who could talk just a little bit about who Veniam is and what they do. And then we'll turn it over to Christy and just to sort of have her lay out the landscape a little bit in terms of how Verizon looks at the IoT sector and why they were interested in investing in this company. And then I'm sure a conversation will flow from that. So Daniel, take it away.
Sure, thanks. So at Veniam, we build the Internet of Moving Things. So a little spin on IoT. It turns out that IoT means we want to connect everything, right? And that includes things in motion. So very specifically, we're focused on connecting vehicles, large fleets of vehicles for Wi-Fi connectivity, onboard diagnostics, telematics. And so we've built a full stack solution that includes all the hardware components, networking software, and cloud backend to be able to enable this connectivity across a large fleet in a large geographic area. We could further expand on the IoT market as we look at smart cities and industrial IoT, and that these vehicles are actually really good sensors and scanners, and they have a lot of analytics data that we can pull back from them because they come with hundreds of or thousands of sensors in some cases, temperature sensors, air pressure sensors. We can tell when they're moving, when they're stopped, traffic conditions, things like that, and bring all that back into the cloud.
So where are you deployed today? Tell us a little bit about sort of where the company's at and sort of where you're deployed and how it's being used.
Yeah, so our earliest successes have actually been in public bus fleets.
Okay.
And we see a lot of different applications for our technology, but I think this market has taken it on early because it really hits a sweet spot in three major categories for our product. So if you think about a public bus fleet, they're connected to the city, so they're part of the IoT strategy. They want onboard diagnostics. They want to be able to tell if the bus driver is wearing their seatbelt, what their driver behavior is. Are they driving fast, slow? How can they optimize the route and the number of buses? All of that stuff is really important. Also to traffic optimization in the city. And we can do all of that. The other driving factor here, and I think this is probably the most important, is they want Wi-Fi. Mayor de Blasio in New York City made a big press release and said, hey, we're going to put Wi-Fi with the Ferrari of buses, right?
Very ambitious project, yeah.
Yeah. And so we're starting to see that happen throughout the country where if you get on a plane today, you expect it to have Wi-Fi. And as millennials move into cities, and we're seeing the millennials all going into the cities and traffic congestion,
connectivity, yeah.
They're all taking public transportation. When I was 16, the first thing you did was get your license. Nowadays they move into the city, they ride public transportation. And they want Wi-Fi. They want to be connected everywhere. So Wi-Fi is driving this movement as well.
I was just going to say, as a millennial, I can vouch for all three of those things.
Could have used Wi-Fi sitting for 20 minutes on Shoreline Drive this morning. Yeah.
Yes.
Everybody was radiating RF.
We'll drop a Veniam AP over there for
That's
you.
Right.
Awesome.
That's right. So Christy, we heard from you already a little bit this morning, but to tell us a quick snapshot of Verizon Ventures and how are you looking at the IoT space, and then what led you to Veniam? Tell us a little bit about that story.
Sure. So I'm Christy Pitts. I'm a manager with the Verizon Ventures team, and Verizon Ventures is the venture capital arm for Verizon. So we invest money in startups on behalf of Verizon for financial and strategic return. And IoT is extremely important to us because it's important to Verizon, and we've launched ThinkSpace as our IoT platform. Right. We have a business unit around IoT, and Veniam is actually a really great story for us because it intersects. It's a company that's at the intersection of several of our priorities. So IoT is one of them, connectivity and using other networks or other creative network other than cellular, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. Transportation is another angle of that as well. And then lastly, smart cities. So, in terms of boxes that you guys could check, you did a great job of checking almost all the boxes on the list. From an IoT perspective, outside of our investment in Veniam, we also have investments in several other companies, including Filament and Bug Labs. Bug Labs was one of the initial partners for our ThinkSpace initiative. Right. And we have a program with Techstars IoT as well. So It continues to be a cornerstone for our investment thesis.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think Verizon has made 3 different acquisitions this year in the IoT space. Telogis, Fleetmatics, and I'm missing one.
Sensity.
Thank you, Sensity. 2 of them are sort of in the fleet connected car arena. So clearly an area of interest, and you've got the initiative called Hum, right, which is quite involved. Are you folks involved in the Hum initiative at all?
No, we're not, but we are very closely watching Verizon Telematics acquisitions. We see a big opportunity there as there's some consolidation in that space.
Yes.
And we are solving a need that is unique for certain segments where Hum is the consumer market, and then you've got Fleetmatics and Telogis in the commercial telematics sector. I think as it relates to the public sector, municipal fleets, and also the industrial sector, that's where our sweet spot is, and I think where you'll see partnerships between us and Verizon Telematics mature in the future.
And you're focused a little bit more on sort of the commercial side, right? Not as much the consumer side?
It's all commercial today.
Okay.
Yeah, we do see a future where tier 1 suppliers like Lear and Bosch and also auto OEMs, which we're having conversations with regularly, will license parts of our product and sometimes all of our product for the consumer market.
Okay. So a lot of this conference is focused on sort of the development of different sectors, but a lot of it is also focused on how do operators look at potential investments, how does one engage with the operators, what is the path to getting sort of attention and also sort of getting to the next stage after an initial meeting. Maybe you could just spend 1 or 2 quick minutes talking to us a little bit about the path that you had with Verizon. Like, how did you initially meet with them, and then what led to the investment, and sort of what's the day-to-day with them?
Yeah, so that's I'm 4 months in, and I'm substituting for our CEO. Could answer that question better, probably. But what I've seen as a portfolio partner is Verizon has really looked at ways across their business line to see where they can use the product internally. Yeah. In fact, we were just at a portfolio conference where they introduce all of their portfolio companies to the internal folks at Verizon. And so I think, Verizon being a $200 billion company.
212.
It is an ecosystem in itself. And so they've done a really good job of involving us, bringing us into external projects as well. So it's certainly a fantastic partnership. Leading to the investment I can't really speak to.
Okay. So one of the areas we sort of touched upon a little bit is sort of how this works into sort of smart city type development and works with the public sector. We'd love a comment from both of you on how do we, certainly smart cities and connected vehicles and sensors as part of that, but what's the roadmap to getting the public sector sort of more engaged and a little bit more of a consistent basis rather than sort of like one municipality at a time, which in my sort of tracking of the smart city market has always been sort of that one challenge.
I'm up first.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that from a smart cities perspective, we really love having Veniam in the portfolio because one of the major forces in smart city adoption is consumer demand.
Right.
And the need for connectivity, data throughput, and now we see this trend towards an expectation of broadband as a right versus having as I can't think of the term, but
privilege.
Privilege, yes. I was going to say preference. I'm like, that's not the right word. So anyhow, what I'm getting at here is that from a smart cities perspective, eventually we'll see a tipping point, and smart cities is really an area where Verizon feel this is a big priority for us, and we feel like we have a lot to offer cities in helping them improve their infrastructure and improve what they have to offer for their citizens. As Dan mentioned a moment ago, there's this trend with millennials and what we expect from cities, and it's very different than what may have been expected in the past. So we look forward to seeing, some cities are leading the way today, but we expect to see that that's going to be very broad across the entire country, and not just in the United States, but around the world.
Yeah. Could you mention maybe one or two examples of cities that you're seeing that are doing some interesting things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think here in the Bay Area, Palo Alto is doing a great job. Boston is another city that we're really excited. We just announced a partnership, and we're bringing fiber to Boston on the East Coast.
Right.
So, not just like
Boston was really interesting because it was all linked to FiOS expansion, 5G, leveraging municipal infrastructure. It all sort of came together, nudged along by Bob Kraft, which is sort of an interesting little side story.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting one. Okay, so what I was going to also ask you is a couple of other examples of where you have implementations for Veniam. Can you talk a little bit about some of your other sort of deployments?
Yeah, sure. So some of our most exciting deployments, and I'll pick one from each country. So we have offices here in the United States, in Portugal, and also in Singapore.
Okay.
So here in the United States, we've deployed a network in Lower Manhattan, which serves the Downtown Alliance, which is a bus fleet, free bus fleet that travels, kind of down Water Street, if you're familiar with Lower Manhattan, and then up the West Side. And so patrons can get on those buses for free. They can ride those buses to their destination and experience free Wi-Fi along the route.
And these are public buses in New York? Yeah,
these are public buses that are paid for and provided as part of the Downtown Alliance.
Okay. And so what is your monetization on these sorts of deployments? How do you charge for the service or products?
Sure. So we charge for the hardware that goes in each vehicle. And so there's a per unit cost. But we also layer on top of that fully managed services, which includes just managing the infrastructure to start, but then also offering fully managed Wi-Fi connectivity on top of that. So if you're a bus company or a fleet manager and you're providing the service, you may not want to have to do the configuration, deploy SSIDs, provide tier 1 support. We do all of that in-house.
Okay.
And then probably the most important monetization strategy that we see for us is advertising. It's pretty clear that advertising is a good business. Google's our best example of that, right? So what we've designed is a platform to be able to extend advertising to splash screens for people that are on Wi-Fi, but also digital screens that are on board inside the bus and then also on the outside of the bus. And so what we can actually do is deliver geographic-based advertising and time-based advertising. So, for example, if you're driving through Times Square in New York City, and on the bus you might see a pop-up on the screen that says that there is a sale for theater tickets.
Yeah.
We could work with an organization like Apple and say, we're going to launch your iPhone 7 on every digital screen across every bus stop, every bus, every taxi, across the entire island at 4 p.m. So I think that's the most interesting monetization strategy that's part of our portfolio.
Are you building a platform to be able to do that, or are you sort of using a third party to deliver those ads, or how does that evolve?
We built the platform, so we have a shipping product today. It's our Generation 1 content delivery solution.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to some audience Q&A in a minute or two. Maybe one quick question for Christy. Just taking a slightly bigger picture view of the space. What are some of the areas that you're most interested in from an IoT perspective, like, you know, and from an investment standpoint? What are some sweet spots? And it's clearly been telematics, clearly been some of the industrial stuff, but what are some other areas that you're seeing or interested in?
So yes, telematics, industrial IoT continue to be a priority, as well as a smart cities vertical for us. Another area is around a big buzzword today that I saw from many of the other partners earlier, which is artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So we have one company in the portfolio already that does this, but we think there's a lot in the industrial IoT space around predictive analytics, predictive maintenance, preventing incidents, and also a huge return on investment there for enterprise applications. So we're excited about that.
Great. And on the smart cities topic, are there one or two areas that you feel sort of in the evolution of smart cities that are still sort of gaps, or like, you know, what are the big needs there? Because we talk about smart cities, it's a pretty sort of what's the right word I'm looking for? It's a market with sort of lots of different elements, right? And that all have to sort of come together. You know, what are a couple of and I'd love to open this up to both of you, but like, what are some of the gaps right now in terms of getting those smart city deployments to sort of scale and have some commonality across them?
Okay, so I heard two questions there.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I would say, like, in answer to the first question, around an area that kind of like a gap that I see an immediate need, I guess is the best way to frame it up, is again, transportation.
Okay.
And I think we all feel the pain of this. Like, in the Bay Area especially, you'll see traffic is a huge issue. Getting people from one place to another is a huge issue. And then the second piece around scalability, I think that as innovative companies like Veniam gain deployment, and it will be like I mentioned earlier, there will be a tipping point, and then it will be an expectation and not something unique and interesting. Yeah. So like
what do you need, you know, to happen from a smart city perspective for what you're trying to do to scale in a big way?
Yeah. So I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Transportation is the biggest issue facing urban cities right now, and I think that is going to actually drive the smart city deployments. We're looking at autonomous vehicles and just safety aspects. I responded to an RFP the other day that was, you know, how can we protect people that are blind as they enter a crosswalk from getting hit by a city bus? So it's a smart city application. So we're starting to see all these things related to transportation. At the same time, the transportation industry understands this, and the DOT is pumping lots and lots of money into this effort. They put out $40 million for that Smart City Challenge that was won by Columbus, Ohio. And they're continuing to make these investments. There's 20 safety-related transportation pilots going on across the U.S. And I think these are the type of things that are going to be, that and autonomous vehicles, I think, are going to drive the smart city infrastructure. And then once that infrastructure, to answer your question, once we get that infrastructure in place through some of these projects, then it just opens up the world. It's like when Comcast deployed the first cable modems here in the Bay Area in Fremont, and we had high-speed internet. Right. All of a sudden, the Silicon Valley went boom, right? So once we build the infrastructure, then amazing things will happen.
The connectivity, the sensors, all that stuff. Cool. All right, so we have a couple of minutes for some questions. So questions for Veniam, questions for Verizon.
Make sure this is on.
Hi there. Thank you for the great presentation. So I have two questions for you, Christy. First one is around smart cities, and I wanted to ask you, do you see public safety within smart cities as a priority for your focus?
So I think public safety is a priority, yes. On the ventures team, we don't have any companies right now in the portfolio that are in the public safety space, but we did have a challenge that we ran last year called the Powerful Answers Award. And one of our winners is a company called Emergency, which provides for 911 operators real-time video, and for citizens within a city better ways to connect when they need emergency support. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is under consideration.
Okay. The next question was, you mentioned ThingSpace, right? And
Yeah.
that was, I think, I guess it's a platform that you have built internally or working with partners. How does, your collaboration with companies like Veniam, how does that sort of feed back into your ThingSpace platform? And the solutions sit on top of ThingSpace, or how does the integration happen?
Sure. So ThingSpace is our developer platform for IoT, and this is a great question. Thank you. And I think I mentioned that our first partner for ThingSpace is Bug Labs, which is a Verizon Ventures portfolio company. And we really see that as ThingSpace continues to grow, that IoT developers are using it and using some of the machine-to-machine connectivity options and APIs that Verizon has to offer to enable additional functionality from their devices. We haven't opened up ThingSpace to a huge ecosystem of developers and partners yet. Developers are onboarding, but the partners are still very select. So in the future, we'll see other partners come on, like Veniam, for example, potentially, but that's going to be more of a roadmap item for ThingSpace.
Great. We have a question back there. Yes.
Yeah, so smart cities is exciting, but one of the notorious things about working with the government is the timeline and the bureaucracy. So in your investment, do you take that into consideration for investing in companies that heavily rely on the government to approve projects and things like that versus something that do not?
That's a good question, yeah.
Yeah, so with any investment we make, we do a very full due diligence process. And one of those things is consideration of the business model for the companies that we're investing in. For a company like Veniam, where municipalities are a target, that's a consideration, but I think Veniam is like I mentioned before, it's at the intersection of all these really important areas for us, and enables connectivity, enables a new experience within a municipality that wasn't seen before, and that's extremely innovative. So the sales cycle is one thing to consider, but there's also the value of the technology to consider as well.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I mean, I think we talked about municipal fleets because those have been early adopters, but actually what we've seen is those projects be funded by telecom operators. So in Singapore, we're partnered with StarHub, and in Europe, we're partnered with Vodafone. And here in the United States, I see lots of opportunity with Verizon and other partners where they want to add connectivity for their customers in vehicles and in fleets. So for municipal installations, I think there's other ways to fund it than going through the slow government process. And we're also very focused on commercial fleets. We see that's the fast time to revenue. But we want to stay close to the municipal fleets and the smart cities because that's all going to be part of this huge transportation evolution that's going on.
Okay, great. Well, I see the clock reading a little bit red over there, so I think that means that we've got to end this session. Although great topics, we could have spent a lot more time on this. But thank you very much. It was really a good session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I appreciate it.